Hello, today is Saturday, August 30th, 2025. My last video was the first in a new series, Death by a Thousand Cuts. It highlighted the growing differential between the U.S. government revenue and U.S. government debt and the prospect for an ever-growing deficit. I have titled today's little video, Tomorrow Will Not Be Like Yesterday. And my sources are news reports and other articles, and the IRS is my takeoff point once again. An article that caught my eye notes that the IRS is rehiring many of the employees that were released, terminated, or pushed to take early retirement by DOGE early this year. The DOGE cuts to IRS staff were particularly severe, and too severe, it turns out. This headline reads, IRS plans to bring back workers it pushed out but now needs. The tax agency lost 25,700 employees, more or less. That's about 25% of the workforce from buyouts and resignations and firings. And it told employees that it now wants to reverse some of those losses by reassigning workers, asking workers who took buyouts to return, and it's launching a hiring campaign. There's also turmoil at the top, a particularly eventful time at the IRS, apparently. The commissioner, former Missouri Congressman Billy Long, left the agency really after just 2 months. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was named as acting commissioner, and he is the seventh commissioner to lead the IRS since the start of the year. Last week, Bessent ousted three IRS executives that are responsible for online tax services and the scrutiny of tax-exempt organizations. Good luck filing your taxes next year, and good luck to all of us if the IRS collects all the taxes that are due. There's another disturbing exodus of leadership and experienced workers is underway at FEMA. The New York Times article says senior leaders are leaving an already depleted disaster agency. And more than a dozen of the senior leaders at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, including those with the most experience in leading disaster recovery, have either been fired or resigned. And this is in addition to the 1,000 or so rank and file workers who have left through job cuts and resignations. Some FEMA employees recently expressed their alarm in a letter to Congress, the Katrina Declaration. They warned that the Trump administration reversed much of the progress made in disaster response and recovery since Hurricane Katrina 20 years ago. I'm not so sure Congress is capable of doing anything, so maybe that was a waste of time. And it turns out that FEMA employees were put on leave after criticizing Trump in that letter. And about 36 people had signed their names, but the majority of signatories were anonymous. And my guess is that they were the ones who received the letters informing them that, effective immediately, they were on an administrative leave, operating in a non-duty status while continuing to receive pay and benefits. So, moving right along, the EPA also fired people for speaking out. And the Trump administration fired at least 7 Environmental Protection Agency employees for signing a letter that was nearly 2 months ago, criticizing the agency's leadership. This is according to union officials. In addition, 144 were placed on leave. And there's more. Hundreds of firings at the Weather Service reduced their ranks. If there's anything the public needs, it's accurate and timely weather forecasts. So that's, let me get the headline up here. So the cuts at NOAA happened in 2 rounds, apparently, with about 1,300 people. This according to Craig McLean, who's a former NOAA chief scientist. That's about 10% of NOAA's workforce. And in particular, the Office of Atmospheric Research was eliminated. And we have a potential here for what I call collateral damage or consequences. Here's a JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association study report showing counties with drug facilities where there have been disaster declarations by FEMA. The headline is Threats of Weather Disaster for Drug Manufacturing Facilities in the U.S. And it reads, in September 2024, Hurricane Helene triggered a nationwide shortage after hitting a Baxter facility in North Carolina that produces 60% of the country's IV fluids. And a similar IV shortage was caused when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico in 2017. These climate change driven by weather events poses threats to vulnerabilities in the U.S. drug supply. And the point is that we should be looking into the potential threats to protect our drug manufacturing facilities, and that will take more people, not fewer. The red dots are the counties that have both drug facility and a FEMA declared disaster. We thought we'd eliminated some threats, and they've flared up again. And the Kaiser Family Foundation reported on a measles outbreak that began in Texas this year. Reed says measles exploded. Officials in Texas looked at CDC scientists, and under Trump, no one answered. And we scroll down here. It reads, as measles surged in Texas early this year, the Trump administration's actions sowed fear and confusion among CDC scientists that kept them from performing the agency's most critical function, emergency response, when it mattered most. And this outbreak soon became the worst in the United States in over 30 years. And this CBS News report shows in more detail where the outbreak occurred. Let me go back up here. It shows more than 1,300 measles cases across the U.S. The Texas cases total about 760 before this state declared it officially over in August. And the total cases nationwide top 1,300, with infections confirmed in 39 states. Measles is one of the most contagious infectious diseases. In some cases, it can cause severe infections in the lungs and brain that lead to cognitive issues, deafness, or death. Now, that sounds ominous. Most people's symptoms improve, but about 1 in 5, that's 20%, of unvaccinated people who get measles will be hospitalized. About 1 in every 1,000 children with measles will develop brain swelling, can lead to brain damage, and up to 3 of every 1,000 children who become infected will die, according to the CDC. Now, doctors and health officials say the vaccine, normally given as part of the combination measles, mumps, rubella, and MMR vaccine, is highly safe and effective. Now, the problem is starting to show up. CDC data shows about 93% of kindergartners in the U.S. were vaccinated against measles during the 2021-22 school year. The rate dropped to 92.7% in 23 to 24 school year. But during the 2019 to 2020 year, the rate was 95.2%. And that's the critical threshold to keep people safe. Vaccination rates are apparently declining and opening the door to more outbreaks. And vaccine research is being cut. The funding for new mRNA vaccines is being cut severely. In August, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced the U.S. will pull $500 million in mRNA vaccine development funding, citing claims about efficiency and safety. Or let's say the administration is failing to support vaccine science, and it's eliminating research in one of the most important vaccine development breakthroughs that we have seen. And the situation is deteriorating. And all this upheaval at the CDC portends further ineffectiveness. And this article of the New York Times, the White House says new CDC director is fired, but she refuses to leave. But she was fired. And after that, about another headline, she challenged it, but she had to go. So the White House says the CDC executive is fired, and she exits after about a month. In addition, 4 of the top officials in the CDC have resigned. I'm going to have to redo this. There's a report from Reuters. It says U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Susan Menarez has been fired, and the White House is affirming that. And in addition, 4 senior officials have resigned amid growing tensions over vaccine policies and public health directives. What we're seeing is the dismantling and silencing of public health institutions and people and experts. The things I've just outlined are incidents of institutional destruction, and they're only part of the destruction unfolding before us, and there's more to come. The damage will sap the country's very strength, and who can put Humpty Dumpty back together again?